Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. These lefty Democrat candidates are absolutely tanking. And now, of course, the current political environment isn't necessarily favoring them, outside of, I guess, the Dobbs issue and the little shift that we're seeing with women voters. But the current political environment isn't all that's to blame. The simple fact of the matter is, these unlikable, cringy, far-left politicians, who are currently running the most high-profile races in some of the most important states, well, they're doing it to themselves. They're tanking their own campaigns. And it continues as, of course, the far-left cringe continues. This video featuring Mandela Barnes from the race in Wisconsin, Katie Hobbs, going against GOP firebrand Kerry Lake in Arizona. They continue to get exposed, they continue to expose themselves. Every week is another massive campaign blunder. And let me show you guys exactly what I mean by that as Mandela Barnes and Katie Hobbs crash into election oblivion. We've got some stuff to get into. So let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so let's first start off with Katie Hobbs. There has been such an effort to demonize Kerry Lake over the last however many months. It's come from the Republican establishment, the media, and of course the DNC. But despite the millions upon millions of dollars used to slander Kerry Lake, the simple fact of the matter at the end of the day is that even in a relatively left-wing or moderate place like Arizona that might be susceptible to the fear-mongering from the media to be scared of Kerry Lake, at the end of the day, Katie Hobbs is just clearly a worse option. Katie Hobbs has a serious image issue right now, and that issue is very simply the Kamala Harris effect. Katie Hobbs, just like Kamala Harris, is unrelatable, cringe, unlikable, and incoherent. Here's a clip of Katie Hobbs that's bouncing all over the internet that has voters in Arizona scratching their head.
Let me ask you, how has it impacted you personally? What have you learned, specifically learned from the Latino community?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't necessarily think about it that way in those terms. I think I really value my relationships across the board with different folks, and I learn all the time from people in my life. My sister-in-law, she is Latino, and her family, I love hanging out with them and practicing my Espanol un poquito. But yeah, I mean, I learned so much from her family, but I think it's really hard to separate out Arizona and subtract Latino culture because it's so much a part of who we are as a state. And Arizona wouldn't be Arizona without what the Latino community brings.
So there's not one specific lesson you could share with me, other than Espanol with you.
What did I just witness? I mean, she froze. The question was, name a specific thing that you have learned from the Latino community. She could have said being true to one's culture and traditions. She could have said faith, values, family values, tradition, knowing how to let loose and have a good time. I mean, there's a lot of things you could learn from the Latino community. It's a vibrant, beautiful community filled with amazing people. She said, my sister-in-law is Latino, and I learn a Spanish, un poquito, what? How do you break down as a politician on such an easy question? This is almost as bad as Jill Biden's breakfast taco moment. Completely out of touch, completely incoherent. And that's coming from a Democrat politician. I mean, I thought Democrats were supposed to be the kings and queens of political pandering and identity politics. The guy even calls her out on it. He's like, you got anything outside of learning Spanish? Oh, you know, learning Spanish. I know like 3 words. Un poquito. Cringe. She is crashing and burning. And you probably have thousands upon thousands of Arizona Latino likely voters who are watching this and just thinking to themselves, themselves, yeah, this ain't it, Chief. This is not who should be leading us. This is an individual who is highly incompetent, probably should be working in a library somewhere, not leading Arizona. Her campaign is crashing and burning, and it's no one's fault but her own. The simple fact of the matter is, Katie Hobbs is unlikable. She's out of touch, and she can't answer simple questions. And she's also still refusing to debate Kerry Lake.
One more time before we let you go, because I think it is on the mind of Arizona voters. Are you saying this morning that there is no circumstance that you can envision or would even try to negotiate in which you and Kerry Lake would appear at a debate together before the election?
At this point in the race, with 30 days to go, our schedule in terms of forums is pretty much set, and I'm really happy with where we are in the plans we have to continue talking directly to the voters of Arizona.
It's not exactly a good look when you're trying to become the leader of Arizona to not even show up to a debate or be able to answer important questions or be challenged on your viewpoints. And actually, speaking of Katie Hobbs and her viewpoints and Latino voters, well, again, there's a little bit of a disconnect here. Take a look at this.
What would the Hobbs administration's week limit be for abortion access? If it's not 15 weeks, what is it?
Look, abortion is a very personal decision that belongs between a woman and her doctor. The government and politicians don't belong in that decision. We need to let doctors perform the care that they are trained and take an oath to perform.
So if an Arizona voter were to conclude from your previous answer that you do not favor any specific week limit on abortion, would they be correct?
I support leaving the decision between a woman and her doctor and leaving politicians entirely out of it.
I don't know about you guys, but I don't think that lines up very well with Latino voters. Or rather, a better way to say it is Latino values. No wonder Katie Hobbs is running away from a debate, seeing how she performed in that interview being asked the most basic of questions. I don't exactly blame her. Not to mention Katie Hobbs' biggest problem, she's going against Kerry Lake. And of course, this is Kerry Lake. Here's GOP firebrand Kerry Lake's weekly based moment.
A very serious question, and it cannot happen until after 2030. Okay. In no way can it happen between now and 2030. Very important. We need you here for 8 years. Are you going to run for president?
It's so funny that this question's even being asked, because the fake news, when I first got into this, they were calling me incompetent and she doesn't know what she's doing. And now they're like, are you going to run for VP? Are you going to be It's like, okay, slow down, everybody. I want to let the fake news know. No, I'm not. I'm going to be your worst nightmare for 8 years. I love Arizona. And I don't love Washington, D.C. And I'm going to be honest, and some people say, you should distance yourself from President Trump. No, I don't distance myself from my friends, okay?
Yeah, I don't exactly blame Katie Hobbs from cowering from a debate. The simple fact of the matter is, Kerry Lake would mop the floor with her. It wouldn't even be close. And I think that the more we get through this election cycle, the bigger Kerry Lake's margin of victory grows. There is just no way, unless some activities are conducted, that Kerry Lake doesn't run with this one. I just can't believe it. It seems absolutely unlikely that unlikable Katie Hobbs, Arizona Kamala Harris Katie Hobbs, manages to win over voters. She's too extreme on the issues. She's too incompetent and incoherent. She's too much of a massive hypocrite, fighting against school choice and private school vouchers, while she herself attended a prestigious, posh private school as she was growing up. She's crashing and burning, and it's very simply because she's a terrible candidate. It's the Kamala Harris-Hillary Clinton effect. And speaking of crashing and burning, let's get into Mr. Mandela Barnes. Another candidate that seems to be a total train wreck. As crazy as this sounds, as crazy as it is, these Democrats running in the most high-profile races right now are all actually lining up with this talking point.
Do you support a woman being allowed to have an abortion up until birth?
Well, I'll tell you, that's a decision that should be made between a woman and her doctor. I don't have the medical credentials to make that decision.
I mean, is that a yes or no, though?
But I think most members of Congress don't have the medical credentials to make that decision.
A lot of people are going to say you, by not saying yes or no, means that you are open to abortion up.
Well, my answer to that is just, I'm not a medical professional, and neither are most people who make this decision.
Whether it's Stacey Abrams, Katie Hobbs, or this clown, this seems to be the new Democrat stance. No restriction on abortion, regardless of the timeline, the trimester, all the way up to the point of birth. They are unwilling to stand by any restrictions whatsoever. That doesn't exactly seem like a winning message. Call me crazy, but that seems extreme. I think what we're seeing here is, as I've been stating for months, a huge mistake from the Democrat Party. A total miscalculation heading into this next election. They've convinced themselves that Dobbs is going to be the top issue. It's not going to happen. I guess a good way to say it is that Democrats are not reading the temperature of the room. They're not reading what the American people want. And it's showing up in their slogans and in their campaigning and in their rhetoric and talking points. Here's another epic failure moment from Mandela Barnes in that upfront interview.
Recently, Barnes came under new criticism after a 2017 tweet resurfaced, where Barnes criticized Republican House Minority Whip Steve Scalise for still supporting gun rights after Scalise was shot and nearly died. Scalise recently called the tweet disgraceful.
Do you owe him an apology?
I'll tell you, does any lawmaker who ignores what's happening and decides to do nothing, I mean, those are the folks who owe families all across America, all across Wisconsin, all across the city of Milwaukee. I believe that Ron Johnson owes people apology. The fact is, what he supported was a violent insurrection.
After being questioned about his tweet mocking Republican Representative Steve Scalise after getting shot by a Bernie Sanders lunatic, or Bernie Sanders supporter lunatic, Mandela Barnes refuses to apologize and then immediately pivots to January 6th insurrection. What an absolute clown. Even Biden's former White House press secretary Jen Psaki, who's a lot more honest all of a sudden at her gig at MSNBC, is able to point out that that's a serious mistake.
I agree with Brendan that crime is an issue that Democrats have to speak to. I think there was a missed opportunity there for Mandela Barnes. When he talked about the insurrection, I think that was a little disconnected from what people in Wisconsin are feeling. I mean, crime is up in Milwaukee.
Nobody cares about January 6th other than your average MSNBC, vote blue no matter who, Trump derangement syndrome patient. Talking about big Democrat cities and voting issues, we just covered a poll from Trafalgar Group showing that the #1 issue in the city of New York, even for Democrats, is crime. Above all else, it's a serious issue as well as the economy. Clearly, if you were a Democrat politician, you'd want to focus on that, but no, of course not. Instead, the stance that they're taking is no limits, no restriction on abortion, all the way up to 9 months, and orange man bad January 6th insurrection and democracy in a midterm election which Donald Trump is not even a part of. It's absolutely moronic. Katie Hobbs, John Fetterman, Mandela Barnes, Stacey Abrams are going to crash and burn as if they haven't already, and it's not exactly a mystery why. They're unlikable, they're extreme, and frankly, they're also very, very cringe. I don't care what the polling says, these Democrat candidates are in for a very serious, rude awakening, wake-up call, a serious surprise come election day. That's just my opinion. That's what I got for you guys though. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. I'm gonna get back to work. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next one.